Hey Mia, I hear you've got a social studies test coming up, so let's get you ready. We're going to dive into something called the Beaver Wars. And yeah, the name sounds a little funny, but trust me, this was a huge, super important part of history. Let's do this. So, I want you to think about this for a second. Could a simple fashion trend, like a fancy hat, actually start a war that lasted for decades? It sounds kind of crazy, doesn't it? Well, you're not going to believe it, but that's pretty much what happened, and we're going to figure out exactly how. All right, so first things first, what even were the Beaver Wars? Well, to put it simply, they were a whole series of really intense fights back in the 1600s, and it was all about fur. Now, this wasn't just one group fighting another. It was way more complicated. You had different Native American tribes teaming up with their own European allies, and the prize they were all after? Beaver fur. See, back in Europe, hats made from beaver fur were the ultimate fashion statement. If you were anybody, you had to have one. That made beaver pelts incredibly valuable. Think of it like the rarest sneakers or the newest game console today. People would do just about anything to get their hands on them. Okay, to make this super easy to remember for your test, just think of it like there were two big teams going head to head. Let's break down who was on each team and what they were trying to do. So in one corner, you had Team France and their Native American allies. They already had a great fur trading business going, and they just wanted to protect it. But in the other corner, you had an incredibly powerful group of tribes called the Iroquois Confederacy. They saw how much money and power was in the fur trade, and they decided they wanted to take it all. Let's zoom in on Team 1. So France had set up camp in North America and made friends and business partners with tribes like the Huron and the Algonquin. It was a pretty good deal for everyone. The tribes would provide the furs, and in return, the French would trade them awesome European goods like metal tools, pots, and even weapons, things that really changed daily life. So their goal was simple: keep the good times rolling and protect their business. And now for Team 2. The Iroquois Confederacy was a serious powerhouse, very strong and super organized. They were backed by the English and the Dutch, who were rivals of the French and also wanted a piece of the action. But the Iroquois had a big problem. They had hunted so many beavers in their own lands that they were running out, so they needed new places to hunt. This was their chance to not only get more land, but also to completely take over the fur trade from France. Okay, Mia, pay close attention here because this part is super important for your test, especially for any of those explain why questions. We know who was fighting, but why? Let's break down the three biggest reasons. It's really like watching dominoes fall. First, the fashion craze in Europe makes beaver fur as valuable as gold. That leads to a massive hunting rush, which then leads to, well, not enough beavers to go around. Suddenly, everyone's fighting over the land that still has beavers. And finally, you have the European countries kind of pushing things along because they knew that whoever controlled the fur trade controlled the wealth. And this is really the most important thing to get. When you boil it all down, it wasn't really about hats or even about beavers. It was about power. Controlling the trade routes meant controlling wealth and influence. It was a high-stakes scheme for control of an entire continent. So, we've met the teams and we know why they were fighting. But what did the war actually look like? Let's take a quick peek at how it all went down. Now, this wasn't just one quick battle. This conflict went on for nearly 100 years. It started with the Iroquois going on the attack, hitting Huron villages and French trading posts to take over. France answered back by sending their own soldiers from Europe, which made the fighting even more intense. For decades, it was brutal and devastating for everybody involved. Finally, after so many years of loss, everyone was just exhausted, and they came together to sign peace treaties, bringing the wars to an end. Okay, so you might be wondering, why do I have to learn about a war over beaver hats from 400 years ago? Well, because the consequences were absolutely huge, and they completely changed the future of North America. Let's look at the three biggest takeaways you need to remember. First off, all that fighting between countries like France and England in Europe, it spilled over and got native tribes involved. Groups that might have been peaceful neighbors were suddenly turned into enemies, all because they had picked different European allies. Now, this is a really, really important point, Mia. The Native American tribes weren't just helpless pawns getting pushed around, not at all. They were smart, strategic players in this whole thing. The Iroquois, the Huron, all of them, they were making their own choices and alliances, doing what they thought was best to survive and become more powerful. And last but not least, the outcome of these wars literally changed the map. Some tribes were almost completely destroyed. Others, like the Iroquois, came out of it way more powerful than before. The whole balance of power in that part of the world was totally different, which set the stage for all the conflicts that came later. Okay, Mia, here it is, the perfect slide to study from. Your final review. It puts everything into a super simple chart. You've got Team 1, France and their allies, basically playing defense to protect their business, and Team 2, the Iroquois and their partners, playing offense to take over everything. If you can remember this chart, you're going to be in fantastic shape for your test. And I'll leave you with one last thing to think about. Just imagine, what if beaver fur hats never became a fashion craze? How might history have been different? How would the relationships between all these different groups have changed? It's pretty wild to think about, right? All right, good luck on that test, Mia. You are totally gonna crush it.